everybody, Brian Forget here, welcome back. And today we are going to combine a few of my interests by looking at this teeny tiny 2.5 gig managed USB powered Ethernet switch. Can such a tiny little thing live up to such high promise? And how much does it cost? Stick around and let's find out. Let's get into it. Okay, so first things first, the price. As of recording, it's going for $50 on the US Amazon store. Now, I did not pay $50 for this. Cudy sent it over to me to check out. They're not giving me any money, any payment of any kind, and they don't get to see or hear about what I'm saying here first. So I just want to be real upfront about that. But there is going to be a coupon for you in the description if you're interested for 10% off the price at the US Amazon store. And if it's any clue for how I feel about it so far, I've already ordered myself another one of these, and so it was $5 off for me. All right, but yeah, if you're interested, check out the coupon code down in the description. Okay, now that we've established the price and my ethics, let's go ahead and see what you get for that money. This is a 2.5 gigabit per second 5-port Ethernet switch that's USB powered and web managed. So any little switch like this could be really useful at the house just to be able to, say if you can run one Ethernet cable from your little home router or whatever over to like your computer room if you have a spare room or something like that. Because one of these ports could be connected on that wire that's run over, and then the other 4 ports could go between like you and the other folks in your family's computers. Maybe you got a printer going on, and that is going to beat Wi-Fi any day of the week. Because yeah, you're just using that one shared link back, but it's a wired Ethernet port that's going to be full duplex bidirectional communication instead of Wi-Fi where you're waiting for your turn to be able to talk. Also, any of those devices that are in that spare room, well, they should be able to talk directly to each other without having to go back over, right? It's going to be really helpful if, say, you're installing a game on Steam on one computer and it's already on another computer. Steam by default wants to be able to just download that from one computer to the other. If you're over Wi-Fi, they're taking turns as one sends a packet up to the router, the wireless access point, and the other one, the wireless access point, then sends it back down to the other computer. On here, sweet, that's going to be able to talk as fast as it's able to across that little network without bothering any of the rest of the Wi-Fi. But any little switch could help you out with that. This cute little thing, maybe if you're traveling and you have a travel router, this could be some more ports on there. Or if you just, basically want some more ports on your home router, this could come in handy. And I will highlight that because this has a useful little trick that you don't usually get to take advantage of. Okay, but that's any little switch. And, it's not like, ooh, this is the best in the world, but being 2.5 gig is really handy. Even if most of your NICs, like mine, aren't 2.5 gig yet, it means that the devices that do support that higher speed would be able to talk to each other at that higher bandwidth, that higher speed. And then the other devices you got that are 1 gig, well, cool, like it negotiates down to 1 gig just fine. But being managed is probably my favorite thing about it for the price, right? 5-port, 2.5 gig, and managed can be an awesome thing. Because the difference between a managed and unmanaged switch is the ability to be able to have it tell you what's going on. Is traffic actually passing on that port? Are we getting some error in the logs when I try plugging something in? And some additional features that we can go into, like the ability to set up a mirror session, to configure VLANs, and those things can make a huge difference if you're doing more than just a few more ports, but instead you want to maybe extend a guest network but isolate it through VLANs, or you're doing a little bit of home labbing and you want to be able to separate out like your storage from your other traffic. Again, VLANs are going to be really helpful for there. Or Or if you're starting to get into security and you want to be able to set up that mirror, that monitor session to say all the traffic going in and out of, say, port number 1 over here, I want to send a copy of that over to 5 where my computer is running Wireshark to be able to analyze all the traffic going back and forth. A managed switch makes all the difference there. And that's where I'd say this is actually pretty reasonably priced for all of those features together. Okay, let's look a little deeper. Looks like lights on top, branding on top. Okay, a couple little keyhole, basically screw slot thingies on there, so one could like mount it on a wall and hang it either way. Cables up or cables down, looks like, sure. Ventilation on the sides. Reset button. Power input here for USB. I want to pretend I don't like reading the manual, but I'm going to read the whole thing before I power it on. Hold it. This is a managed switch. Obviously, there's no serial port or anything on here, so it's going to be web managed. From what I saw, there's also like a cloud option. I'll be honest, I'm not a big cloud option person. Broadly speaking, I don't want my infrastructure to have to talk to the internet for me to talk to the infrastructure. I want it to just work, and I want to be able to do that from here without having to let it open up sessions outside my firewall. All right, first power on. Let's just see what we get for power. Okay. Temporary flashing on all of the link lights and back off again. It said in the documentation it was just going to do 5 volts up to 1 amp. It's just a 1 gig link. Okay, bringing up a VM. I'll put in IP in the right direction. So, Danny Brown! Here we go. All right, the default, like we said, is 192.168.2.1 on here. So I'm going to give us an address in that range, /24. Go for 2.100, just click out of there. Okay. Validate that it's showing yet. Okay, sweet. And let's try pinging 2.1. Hey, perfect. Okay. And let's try logging into the thing. Perfect. Okay, the documentation did say that it would you'd get prompted to set a new password on the first login. It didn't have a default, so yay, that makes sense here. It's just saying, hey, put in some new password. You don't need an old one. Now we're putting that password in we've just created and leave it at English for my purposes. Hey, and here is that login. Yeet. Okay. Yeah, all right, reasonably modern look here for web interface. We had a similar interface for Marvell-based web managed switches back at my old job. So looks like we got navigation along the left side here. The center then switches to giving you details of the pane you're on. Okay, we got our link lights here. Let's see, we were on system info. Now we're heading over to IP settings. Here's where we could change things. Account settings, here's where we could change the password again if we weren't, maybe didn't love that first one we set. System logs. Looks like so far it's just local logging. We'll look through and see if there's anything about syslog. It's not as likely, but hey, we can download the logs. Port management, here's the stuff. Basic, enable, disable, hard setting a speed or leaving it at auto, which is almost certainly the good idea. It's funny, it looks like the same web management gets used for multiple devices here because 10 gig is an option. The switch does not advertise that capability, so I'm going to assume it's not really an option. And port descriptions, always a fan of that. It's fine, it's fine. So port trunk here, I was kind of wondering which way they were going to go. So some devices refer to a trunk as definitely what I think of would be multiple VLANs on a single port. That's not this. This is more of what Fiber Channel would think of as a trunk, where it's multiple physical ports bound together. This is your port channel. This is bonding multiple physical ports together to act as one. Whatever's the other end of the cables would also need to be set up as a port channel as well. It looks like we've got an option for 2 different port channels. I mean, there's only 5 ports on here, so that's fine. Like, if you had ports 1 and 2 in a port channel, and 3 and 4 in a port channel, well, like there'd only be one port left, so you couldn't need any more than that. Let's see here. Oh, that's funny. We could select all the ports to be in a single port channel. Wouldn't do us any good. Let's have some fun here and say that ports 4 and 5. Oops. There we go. Let's have some fun and say that ports 4 and 5 are going to be in a port channel. Leave hashing just set to everything. Sure. And what's it going to do? Success. Okay, great. And now where it was empty before, now it shows is that group ID and port channel ID. One is ports 4 and 5 and whether or not it's active. Check mark do anything for us? Oh, there we go. This would let us delete it. All right, hey, let's just delete that again for funsies. Success. Okay, great. Port mirroring. Ooh, okay. So port mirroring, this is the idea of being able to say that like all the traffic going in and out of, say, port 1 is going to get copied over to port 2. Why? Well, this would be like if you had a computer running Wireshark plugged into port 2, then it could get a copy of everything going into port number 1. Well, that's really more how. It doesn't really say why. Probably what you'd be doing it for is for either troubleshooting or security. Like if you're plugging in a security appliance to some port and it needs a copy of everything going in and out of another one. In that case, if it's a security appliance, it's almost certainly going to be your uplink to the rest of the network that you'd want to copy everything over to some security appliance. For troubleshooting, it would be like, hey, I'm trying to run these backups or something and I keep getting a failure, or I'm getting really poor I/O on my my data transfers to the NAS or something like that. So I want to set up some other computer with Wireshark to be able to watch all the traffic going in and out of it. And I don't want to run that capture on the computer that I'm trying to troubleshoot from because I don't want to affect the outcome by making the computer more busy. That's why you might set up a mirror session here, sometimes also called monitor session. You know, let's draw this. So here's our little switch. And let's just get some ports on here. All right, so ports, not prettiest. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I've just configured it so that target port, that's where it's sending stuff to, is going to be port 5. And the source is going to be port 1. And so presumably now there's some computer that is plugged into port number 1. And this PC or whatever is the one that's running, that's sending and receiving traffic that we need a copy of somewhere else. And that's plugged into, like we said, our port 1 over there. Okay, meantime, we're over here with Wireshark running on our computer and we're plugged into port number 5. Okay, and so now where we specified the source RX port, that's gonna be any traffic coming up the wire. And that's our receive traffic on that port 1. The source transmit port TX, that's anything that's going out of, in this case, port 1. And so in this case, either of those are now going to be copied over to our port number 5. Target port 5, source port, receive 1, transmit 1. Okay, I'm just going to clear this out for now. Okay, so next one here, speed limit. Now this is not our negotiated speed. We saw that back over there on port settings where it was just set to auto for auto negotiation by default, and we could hard set a speed. Here, this is limiting the actual bits per second that are going to be transmitted or received on some port that we specify here. Ingress rate is inbound. Hey, we can use our drawing. Ingress is inbound on whatever port we specify our rate limit, and egress would be outbound. And so it looks like we'd be able to specify here if we wanted to in bits per second on some port. If you were going to do this, it would likely be on your uplink to the wider network. Right? Like if, gosh, in a home network, don't do this. You're fine. In a small business environment, if you are connected up to whatever firewall your ISP is giving you on some port, and yeah, it's negotiated at gig or 2.5 gig or whatever, but what you have paid for is not that speed, you might come in here and specify that you will not transmit at any higher than the speed you have paid for. And potentially you will not receive at any higher. It depends on your contract with your ISP, but generally speaking, man, receive, as fast as they'll give it to you. Don't worry about it. but don't upload any faster than the contract you've paid for. And the reason for that might be, again, depending on your contract with your ISP, especially as a small business, it might be that they will accept a higher bandwidth than you have paid for, but charge you for it. Yeah, so that's what this is going to be for. This is going to be for bandwidth restrictions. All right, let's keep looking. Jumbo frame. So jumbo frame, this is the maximum amount of size for each Ethernet message. 1500 bytes is standard Ethernet frame size. Technically, anything bigger than 1500 bytes is a jumbo frame. Oh, 1514 is pretty standard all the same. 1514. But it looks like by default here, this is set to 9K or 9,000 bytes for maximum Ethernet frame size. This is fine. You could just leave it at this jumbo frame and have it be fine. Why would you want to specifically disable jumbo frames? Probably wouldn't. Just let it be. But if you had some application that kept trying to send frames that were too big and they were being thrown away, this would be something you could come in and say, look, have the switch throw it away here instead of getting it out the whole way to the internet before it's thrown away. All right, let's see, traffic monitor. Oh, hey, here we go. We just got counter. That's nice. Transmit bytes, receive bytes, transmit packets, receive packets. And hey, just like we were just saying, the number of bytes is significantly bigger than the number of packets, right? Because it's likely, not always, but likely more than 1,000 bytes in every packet. They don't have to be full size, but they can be. And so, yeah, way more bytes. I only have something plugged into that one port right now, and it's just literally for the web interface. Okay, let's head over to the VLAN settings. Cool, 802.1q VLAN, that's just the IEEE standard for VLAN tagging here. Yeah, just like you'd expect, all the ports are a member of a VLAN by default, VLAN 1, but we're seeing that as the untagged VLAN here. Basically, it's almost like not having a VLAN at all, virtual local area network, when it's untagged. It's just saying that all the 5 of the ports are in the same broadcast domain right now. But this would allow us potentially to add a second VLAN and maybe, almost said half, there's an odd number, maybe 2 of the ports are in a different VLAN. Okay, so all those ports are in the same VLAN by default, same broadcast domain. With 5 ports, you get into a little oddness kind of for how you would want to use VLANs, and it's just kind of down to the number of ports you have, right? If I just had like ports 1 and 2 in the same VLAN as each other, and 3 and 4 in the same VLAN as each other, but like separate, so like VLAN 1 for ports 1 and 2, VLAN 2 for ports 3 and 4, that would work. That would isolate it so that only port 1 can talk to port 2, and 3 could only talk to port 4, but at that point, you could also just like plug those computers directly into each other and it would be the same thing without having to eat up switch ports. Right? So that's where it's kind of a limitation with so few ports. That being said, it looks like we've got the option for more than just untagged VLANs, so it can make some more sense, especially if you're doing like a home lab environment. And the reason for that would be because we could have multiple VLANs on each of those ports. So maybe VLAN 1 is the untagged VLAN, but maybe VLAN 10 and 20 are tagged going out to ports 1 through 4. And then you've got virtual machines running on those computers. Yeah, and then different virtual machines have access to the different VLANs, because in your hypervisor, the software running those VMs, it could be configured to look for the tagged traffic and associate that with different vSwitches associated with different virtual machines. And so in this way, you could have those multiple different broadcast domains, VLANs, sent out to like ports 1 through 4, go into all your different computers with their different virtual machines on them. And so now all of the virtual machines that are associated with VLAN 10 can talk to each other. The ones on VLAN 20 can talk to each other, even though there's just the one cable coming up going to the switch. That's where it can make some sense when you've got multiple VLANs on each of those ports and you're doing it like that. And then you could trunk it up again to the wider network, say on port 5. Okay, let's see, tools. Hey, here's our firmware upgrade. I'll take a look at that in a while. Backup and restore. So here's where we can download or upload our configuration. Generally speaking, if you are going to do a firmware update, it's a good idea to back up your config first on any device and probably save your config again after the update. System reset. Looks like we can revert it to factory default. So let's assume that I've changed like 7 different things and I'm like, what was I thinking? I can revert it back to factory defaults from here. I'd have to be able to log into it to do it, but that's okay. There's also a little button on the front marked reset, a little recessed one. Reach in there, hold it down for about 5 seconds according to the manual, and that's going to do the same factory reset. And we got our system reboot here, just to reboot the thing. I haven't found any settings in here that say they require a reboot, but yeah, we got an option to reboot it here if we needed to. Oh, interesting. I just found this save button that I didn't notice before. Are you sure you want to save the configuration? Success. Interesting. So I'll need to play with it some more, but we found the apply button, and I just found the save here. It's possible that for those changes to go into effect, we would actually need to hit the save button. Okay, and we got logout's our last option here. Yeah, all around, I'd say, seems like a good little gadget. I'm excited about it. So I'm going to try it out and see what I think, put it through its paces, and we'll see what's up. All right, checking that firmware here. We're just on their product page. Go to downloads, and yeah. 106 is what I was at, so we're already on the latest as of recording anyway. And let's talk about some of my testing, because yeah, overall, I'm pretty happy with this thing. So let's see. I have run it through its paces a fair amount. I've plugged in 5 different connections to it. I set up a port channel going off to one of my enterprise switches here. Things turned out just fine there. It did do a little bit of fiddling to get it going. I had ended up having to actually restart the Cudy at some point, but I don't know, I might have had something wrong. It is a static port channel if that's what you're looking for, if you need to configure that over at the other side of things. But yep, both links came up, was able to pass traffic across both of them. I was also running iPerf between a couple of different hosts, validated that I was able to get the full speed. You're never really going to see 2.5 gigabits per second because of overhead, but yeah, about 2.3, 5-ish, 3, 4-ish, that's what you're looking for generally speaking. And now for the whole power thing, the whole especially USB power thing. So the manual says that at most it will pull 6 watts of power. Now, in my limited testing, I never got past 4.5 watts of power, though I could see maybe there could be some circumstances when, it might peak out to that 6. So the reason, though, that this whole no more than 4.5 watts is pretty exciting is because it was also not doing PD power delivery or anything like that. It was just asking for 5 watts of power from USB and then just, pulling the amps it needed to pull. And so that means that we could use all sorts of different gadgets, USB ports, to power this, right? So maybe if you're going crazy, that could be run it off of just like a USB power bank for your Ren Fair camping LAN party if you want. Or for more mundane situations, maybe running it off the USB port on the back of your home router. Or maybe even if your UPS has a USB port, run it off of there. Okay, and why is that cool? Well, for the Ren Fair thing, it's because it means you have the coolest friends in the world. For the router thing, it means that you can plug this into the USB port on there to power it just at the normal 5 volts, and then run your network cable over to it as well, of course. But if you've got your home router and modem connected to a UPS, and you should, well, now if you do need those additional ports for some switch, it's not eating up another outlet on the back of your UPS, and it's just sipping power at that most 6 watts, more likely closer to 5 watts. And so that also means there's no question of whether or not it should be hooked up to a UPS. So for instance, I've got another little switch that I run over by my cable modem, and I've got a bunch of different devices plugged into that. But I do not have it plugged into my UPS because I don't want it sucking down that extra power during an outage. Even if it's just like, 15 minutes down or something like that, I want everything to stay up. That's important to me, but it just hasn't been worth plugging in that switch to it. But this thing, that 5 watts is so small that it's not going to really impact the power budget significantly. So I'm not worried about how much more power it's going to eat up on my UPS. And even just day to day for the good times, yay, cheaper, right? Just using less power to run it. Okay, conclusion time. I like this little 5-port, 2.5 gig USB powered managed switch. That managed thing is really important. I think it's very reasonably priced compared to other managed switches as well. And that USB power adds a lot of flexibility to how you're going to use it, whether it's some crazy thing traveling or even just day to day. I do wish there was another option with either a few more of those 2.5 gig ports or maybe a single 10 gig port, as long as it was also reasonably priced. But I definitely understand the need to stay under a power budget, so fair enough. All right, everybody. You rock. I'm still having a good time, and I hope you are too. We'll see you next time. Okay, box. So, let's see. There was a bag, and the box was in the bag, and there was a bag on the box, and there's a bag in the box, in the bag, in the bag, with a thingy in it. Okay,